Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Magicians Without Borders Conversations. Let me say hello to you all here on the chat. Thank you for being here. My name is Carlos Lopez, and I am so glad that you're joining us today. And I want to remind you, everybody, that every last Wednesday of the month, we have our mailbag episode. So if you want us to address any comments or questions that you have, please do send them to our email, podcast@magicianswithoutborders.com, or tweet them at magicianswb. We are eager to hear from you wherever you are in the world, and if you have any questions or comments for us. And as always, I want to remind you of different ways that you can support us that is different from a donation. One is that if you want to learn magic or you want to give a gift of a magic course, you can go to our store.magicianswithoutborders.com, and over there you can find this course, Become a Magician, a wonderful course that our founders, Tom and Janet, did, and it's a self-paced video magic course that you can learn at home. Also, if you want a private lesson from us or a private magic show from us, you can definitely have it from there, store.magicianswithoutborders.com, and you can definitely do that. And also, a great way to support us is connecting us with somebody that works on a remote company. So if you know somebody that's working remote and they are on a remote team, then this is a great opportunity for them to go to corporate.magicianswithoutborders.com and find out of our solution for enhancing the remote team's well-being. We can do that with great interaction, interactive magic shows that have, of course, as always, a social impact, because we do it with our kids in the slums. So this is how that service looks like. It's a great way to interact with your employees or with your collaborators wherever they are in the world, and we can have a hands-on experience via a workshop, or we can have it half and half. We'll have half of the experience can be a show where they just sit back and watch, and half of the experience would be interactive, where they get to learn magic. Or we can also do a show that it's also interactive, and it can be delivered to any communication platform. It's a real treat, and we've done this for great companies, and they really love our work. We have a 9.6 satisfaction rate out of 10. So we would really love if you can connect us to anyone that you know that works on a remote team. And for today's episode, we're going to have an evening with our founders. I'm very excited for this because I am not going to be joining you for the rest of the episode. You're going to be invited into Tom and Janet's house, the founders of Magicians Without Borders, and with them you can sit back, relax, have a glass of wine or water or your favorite beverage, and just enjoy their conversation on the history of Magicians Without Borders and any great things that we learn from them. I'm sure that they're going to be invaluable. So I'm going to add them to the stream. Hey, Janet, Tom, how are you guys?
We're doing great.
Thanks, Carlos.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for opening up your house to us today, and for taking the time to let everybody in to the secrets of Magicians Without Borders. And I hope that you guys have a great conversations. And I'll see you at the end of the session. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna miss you. We'll see you in a while.
Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye, Carlos.
So let's have you and me. Let's have a hi.
It's just
You and me.
Tom and Janet.
Let's have a little conversation about Magicians
I'm not sure
Without
where to
Borders.
look. I want to look at you people in the audience, but I want to look at Tom. So
We'll go
figure
back
out
and forth.
how to do that.
So we talked a little bit, a little while ago. We would begin, and we thought we would begin at the beginning. And I've told this story about 10 or 20 episodes ago on Conversations, but it's kind of the origin myth story of Magicians Without Borders through an amazing set of circumstances. A lot of it, what Janet and I call angel moments, what the great psychologist Carl Jung called synchronicity. I ended up in Kosovo, and I ended up doing 15 magic shows over 5 days for refugees who had to flee from Serbia into Kosovo. And the very first camp that was a little camp, a couple thousand refugees, mainly Roma people. People are often called gypsies. That's not something they like to be called. So they were Roma people. And I met this amazing little girl named Fatima. And she became my tour guide through the camp as we did 2 or 3 shows. And there was just something about Fatima that was totally wonderful. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak Roma or Serbo-Croatian, but she just was very helpful all day. And it was time to leave, and I turned to say goodbye to Fatima, and she was gone. And I had been talking to some Roma women, and I said, "Do you know where Fatima was?" And she said, they said, "We thought she was with you." And I said, "She was, but she's gone." So I said, "Please say goodbye to Fatima." So I walk over to the car with my suitcase of magic props, and I look in the car, and there's Fatima laying on the floor, hiding in the back of the car, wanting to run away with the circus, with the magician from Moment Potok. Well, the Roma women came over and they talked to her, and she was a good Roma kid. She had taken her best shot. It didn't work, but she was smiled down the road. 20 minutes later, we come to a little town called Shutka. And Shutka was not a refugee camp, but the driver from the United Nations who was driving me around, he said, life is terrible in Shutka right now. It's swollen with refugees. 1.5 million refugees came into this tiny little country of Kosovo in 3 months. So it was just filled with refugees. And he said, they need some magic in Shutka. So we drive into Shutka, into the town square. We set up some boxes, put a tablecloth over it, and we set up for a magic show. Within maybe 10 minutes, there were 350 people. So we do the show. It ends. It went pretty well. Everybody leaves, except a few Roma men standing beside me. And this Roma woman, she comes up to me. And she has in her hand a 5 dinar Macedonian gold coin. And she drops it in my hand. And she points to it. Now, she had seen me multiply sponge balls and all kinds of things. She points to this 5 dinar Macedonian gold coin, says, make more money. She wanted to see if my magic had any market value. So I take the coin, I throw it into my hand, I squeeze the coin, open it, and there is a chunk of what looks like gold. It's actually pyrite, but it looked like gold. And I offer it to her, and she smiles, mildly amused, and she says, money, more money. So I put the gold into my hand, I squeeze it, and there is a 50 dinar Macedonian gold coin, 10 times what she had given me. I drop it into her hand. She, smiling, walks away. Instantly, 2 of those Roma men standing beside me say, make us visas to America. And I laughed. I laughed like you did. They were totally serious. 2 feet from they had just seen money multiply tenfold. Certainly, I could reach into the air and find visas to America so they could realize their hopes and dreams. I couldn't do that trick. I wish I could have. So that night, I'm driven back to Skopje, Macedonia, just across the border from Kosovo, where I was staying. And I started thinking, now that was the very first refugee camp I was ever in. Janet and I have been in many refugee camps over these last almost 20 years. But that was the first one. What happened today? And I realized something that I had never realized. I had been doing magic for at least 20 years. 25 years at that point. And I never realized magic was a universal language. I didn't speak their language. They didn't speak mine, but we all spoke magic. They all understood magic. The other thing that night, I thought was an amazing quote from the great Harry Houdini. And this quote, in some ways, sums up the soul of Magicians Without Borders. Harry Houdini said, sometimes when I do magic, especially for people in difficult situations, my magic not only amazes and amuses, but it awakens hope that the impossible is possible. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's why something. Fatima saw magic, she thought, maybe I can escape from Momen Potok, from the refugee camp. The men in Shutka saw magic. Maybe we can go to America and realize our hopes and dreams. I didn't know it at that moment. I didn't know it, but the seeds for Magicians Without Borders were planted at that moment, that night in Skopje, Macedonia.
And I remember you saying you wrote in your journal about that when you were there,
I was
sleeping on someone's
a landing of a staircase.
Staircase.
Yeah.
Probably couldn't sleep.
Not very
Writing
well.
about that, and the idea for Magicians Without Borders started cooking in you.
Started cooking, yeah, or growing.
And then when you got home,
I said, I want to start this organization. I'm thinking maybe of calling it Magicians Without Borders, and I'm going to go to refugee camps and do magic. And what did you say?
I said, that sounds wonderful. I think I should come with you. What can I do?
She did
because
not.
You're not going to travel around the world without me.
And I said, you know what?
Travel.
You know what I need? In those during those 15 shows in Kosovo, these kids had been in this camp for a number of years, and here comes this person, a white person with a beard. They thought I was Santa Claus, some of them. People, all these strange looking things, all my magic props for the show. And they're coming up and wanting to grab them and look at them. And I'm saying, no. And it felt awkward pushing them away or, telling them to.
You said like 300 people would
there were all these
crowding
around me before and after the show when it was time to, they're grabbing things and seeing things. So I said, I need somebody to run interference while I'm setting up and taking down. So that's what I said to you.
Yeah.
Do you think you could do that?
And I started thinking about it, and this character came to mind. How am I going to do that? And I had the idea of La Fleur. Character came with a name. And quickly I envisioned what she would wear, and I realized that she had to be a mime, that she couldn't talk because I don't speak languages of these countries.
And she's also a visual artist. She doesn't think she can speak very well. So, I think she speaks amazing. You'll see in the next hour here.
Yeah. So I apprenticed to some mimes. I immersed myself thoroughly in all the greats, Chaplin and
Buster Keaton. You watched all his movies.
And Bill Irwin, and anybody I could watch, and enlisted Chris Yerlig, a wonderful mime that's up in the New England area. Here in the U.S., and I learned what I could and found that I had a little bit of ability to do it. Years of practicing yoga, I think, helped. And
what's La Fleur's character like?
And I also read about clowning. Some of the early clowns, that type of some traditional clowning, was meant to diffuse evil or to give people an opportunity to really feel their feelings. And
the fool, traditionally, when things get too serious, when the king is being too serious, the jester, the court jester, the clown, the fool
makes fun
makes
of
light.
light.
Of
So
it, which is beautiful.
in some of these places that we travel to, magic is something other than entertainment. And we found out about that right away because some people thought Tom, the magician, was evil. And some people thought I was manipulating him, that I was somehow
She was the
real
magician because she didn't talk. She was kind of androgynous. They couldn't tell whether she was a man or a woman.
Yeah. And her character, Lafleur, is an innocent, and she feels sad when she can't catch the bubble,
or the balloon,
or her balloon breaks, or her juggling is really silly and it's more like a dance. And kids can laugh, or they can feel sad for her. They feel sad that she can't talk. But they can laugh when her suitcase gets stuck and she tries to bring it on stage. And so there's lots of opportunity for people to experience all the emotions. And that prepares them and takes away some of maybe the ominousness that a magician can bring to the stage.
But and also, we just did a show last Friday at the Long Island Children's Museum. Janet is having a big exhibit there.
I'm a visual artist, as Tom said, a painter.
50 of her drawings and paintings. And she did a week of workshops there teaching children how to draw water and the language of water. Every show, Janet was trying to juggle, and she was not doing it. She was being very silly, and like she said, she was dancing more than juggling. And the audience was saying, "That's not." I said, "Is that juggling?" They said, "No, that's like dancing," And they were kind of on my side at that point. And then she tried it 2 more times, and it didn't go well. And then I said, "You go and practice. I'll juggle." And she got sad and she started crying. And the kids in the audience said, "It's okay. It's okay." And Lafleur kind of opens up the heart of the audience. And it's wonderful, because sometimes magic can be kind of abstract and sort of cerebral. Things are appearing and disappearing with or without emotion, but Lafleur really brings. You bring the heart.
Some of our first, you might say, official trip was to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa, and then to some of the refugee camps in the area of Gambela. And
on the Sudan-Ethiopia border.
And our very first show was, as I remember, was in like a town hall, and people were, they were urban refugees. And I was standing in the back because I was going to say the first show. I had never performed before, really.
She was going to tiptoe into this, but.
Yeah, so I thought I'd sit out and just see how it went. And I stood in the back of the auditorium, and I was between 2 young men, and one guy was laughing his head off about what Tom was doing, and the other one was muttering, "He's evil, he's evil.
This is Satan's work.
This is Satan's work." And I had to talk to this guy as best I could. He spoke some English and say, no, that's my husband. He's just a magician. And that didn't do any good. But I enlisted the guy on my other side to convince him that he's just doing tricks. There's nothing real magic about it. He's not going to harm anybody or maybe.
Something we have found, though, in these countries, and this is a picture that you can see for yourself. We then went from Addis Ababa to the Sudan-Ethiopia border. Ethiopia shares a 2,000-mile. And we did a show, a bunch of shows in big refugee camps. And this was in a town called Gambela. And the UN was very smart because around the camp are small villages. And believe it or not, some of the refugees, at least in terms of food, are better off sometimes than the people in the villages because they're being fed by the World Health Program, World Food Program. And this is a village, and you can see like half the people are Ethiopians and half of them with the darker complexion, that amazing blue-black Sudanese complexion are Sudanese. But every one of the children are smiling. And even though in Sudan and in parts of Ethiopia, magic, as Janet said, can be, and we ran into this not just that time, but we did a private party at someone's house, and there was a priest there, and he was very, very upset that we were even allowed in the house. But children, like from 10, 12 years and younger, no matter what their culture, no matter what the beliefs, just love magic, and that was our sense, and you can see it in that picture. What else do you remember from that first? I just have to say, another angel moment was when I was in Kosovo. I was doing a show in a tiny village, and in the middle of the show, this Land Rover pulls up, and out gets some people, and it had the UN High Commission for Refugees logo on the side. And out gets a man and a woman. The woman has, and she comes up and she takes a bunch of pictures of the performance and the audience. And then after the show, she came up to me, like reporters do, and says, I just took some pictures. Is it okay to use them? And I said, yes. And what name and where are you from and what are you doing here in Kosovo? So I told her.
Was that Helena?
Yeah.
Co.
Now, this was before, remember, Magicians Without Borders was formally founded. And then I came back from that trip, and I decided to start this together. And then I get a book in the mail from this woman, this photographer. And there are 3 or 4 pages of photographs of this magic show. And it was about kind of the healing that happened after the Balkan War. And this was part of the healing, my magic show, which was really an honor to be in that book. And her contact information was there, and I contacted her, and she said, I'm coming back to New York. She happened to be French, Helena Co. And she was coming to New York, and she was been in Kosovo for 5 years, and she was just going to take a break. And I said, well, why don't you come up and stay for a week with my wife and in beautiful Vermont. We have a very nice house out in the woods and in the mountains, and it's very peaceful. She loved the idea. So she came up. And we had decided to start Magicians Without Borders, and we were trying to plan a trip to Ethiopia. And someone said, come in Geneva. Her name is Delphine Marie. And I called her, or I sent her an email. I sent another one. I didn't get any response. And I said, we'd like to go and do magic shows in the refugee camp. You know, that sounded like to her, but she didn't respond. So Helena shows up at our house, and I told her about Magicians Without Borders, and we're going to start this organization, and we'd like to go to Ethiopia. And I've been trying to get in touch with this woman in Geneva at the Mission for Refugees headquarters named Delphine Marie, and she isn't responding. Helena says, she's my best friend in the UN High Commission for... I said, what? She sat down at my computer and wrote Delphine Marie a letter about us and how wonderful we are. And she connected us with the public information officer in Ethiopia. And we were off and running. Would you tell them about the public information officer in Ethiopia, Mr. Mahari?
We often think about angels that accompany us on our trips, people who have just helped us get to where we're going, or organize us, or have whatever. But one of our first angels was Mahari Maasho, who was the information officer for the UN in Addis Ababa, where we first traveled to, and he
was to take care of guests.
Yeah. So he organized all the trips to the refugee camps and accompanied us. The UN has been wonderful in allowing us to go to these places, and will help us go. They don't give us money. We support to go to these on all our trips.
They often let us stay in the camp in the UN compound.
We've been now to Ethiopia a few times, and Mahari has always escorted us to where we're going.
One time a 3-week, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 mile trip all around Ethiopia, up into
the Tigrayan area,
where that terrible war is going on at the moment.
Mahari is a wonderful man. I think he's retired now.
Yeah.
But he has...
Do you remember when we were driving up there in the Tigrayan region, and Mahari had been the head of the Red Cross during the terrible famine in 1982.
Yeah.
And we were on that mountain.
Yeah, and we're driving through a village, and some woman recognizes him and is crying, and she's wanting to get his attention, and gives him a big hug. And she remembers when he brought a brigade of people, got the townspeople to plant trees there, because he realized most of Ethiopia is deforested.
And that contributed to causing
the
famine.
aridness of and he told us the story about planting those trees. He lost his child.
Well, her child was really sick and dying from malnutrition, and she brought her child to Mahari at the Red Cross headquarters, and they put the child, and she said to him, my son now owns an auto mechanic, and now he owns his own auto shop, And she got down and she kissed his feet and hugged him and thanked him, because she said, without you, my son would have died, you know. And we were then driving up this mountain, and we stopped. And when we stopped, he pulled over to the side of the road. We looked out, and there was mountain after mountain covered with trees. And he
That
says,
he had planted how many years before? 30.
that was,
30
let's see,
years?
that was 82, 92. That was 20 years before. And millions and millions of trees, because he knew that the famine was caused, you know, by bad land management. And so he planted those to help mitigate and prevent future famines.
So there's been many moments on the many trips that we've been on, and we have lots of stories, and I know we only have an hour. So we want to tell you a few of the stories that we remember that really touched our heart. And actually, Mahari escorted us to a refugee camp in Ethiopia. Sometimes I have to refer to to my journals. Both Tom and I keep a journal of our trips, and mine are more visual. And I have about 30 of these journals from our
These
trips.
are all Ethiopian ones.
So yeah, I have 3 or 4 from
Do you have
Ethiopia.
about Rapon? Do you remember Rapon?
One of them, I do have.
I think that was from 2003.
Okay.
This was, I believe, a refugee camp called Banga. And
2005.
These are immense refugee camps, 35, 40,000 people. And people are living in these camps for 15, 20, 25 years. And Mahari introduced us to this young man, this amazing young man named Rapon.
Rapon lived in a little tukul, something like this, in the village. Well, it wasn't a village, but it was a community of refugees, UN refugees, and his mother lived across the way. Rapon was 14, and he was married.
He was married and had a child.
What was special about Rapon is that he had a genius for electronics, and he put together, with the help of the director of the camp, who found him scraps of radio, made himself a radio, and then he made himself a walkie-talkie or
an intercom
system with his mother, because he already had a baby, his wife, and he had a child there. And I think he was working on a TV or something like it. He made a fan in his tukul.
First the radio, and then the intercom system. And then he found old televisions thrown away in a dump somewhere. And he got the pieces, and somehow this 14-year-old, and one of the things that was wonderful about Rapon, and Mahari really, really helped Rapon and told his story, and the BBC actually ended up coming to Rapon's village and meeting Rapon and doing a story of his genius and his intelligence and his facility with electronics. And he ended up getting a scholarship to a British school to study electronics.
Yeah,
he was also a painter.
Yeah, he's also a painter. This is at Banga camp, Bella, and
That was his tukul.
his tukul, and here's his. He had interesting pictures on the wall
Of
here's some-
movie stars
yeah,
and
here's-
things.
Ray Palm. Where this is there's Ray Pond.
And people have asked us, is it difficult being in these camps and seeing all that suffering? And actually, what made us feel the worst was, and somehow Rapon, his story, his success story, put it in relief that so many of these kids have so many gifts and so much talent that just never get opportunity to grow and to express themselves. And it's just feels like such a sad, tragic waste. One of the great tragedies of war are the lives of these refugees.
Yeah, they all have hopes and dreams, don't they? But
Oh
they,
my God.
you know that most of them will not realize them. Most of them will not be as fortunate as Rapon. One of our second angel moments, I think, was in Haiti. That was one of our second trips in 2003 also.
We met,
I have
I can't, do you remember how we got connected with St. Joseph's Orphanage in
somebody here,
Port-au-Prince?
some church group, I
Some
think.
church
supported-
wrote about our trip to Ethiopia and our visits to orphanages and refugee camps. And they said, poor Haiti. And they knew, I think it was Trinity Episcopal Church in Shelburne, Vermont. I think we were there doing that. And someone from that congregation, I think, connected us with Haiti. And we went for 2 weeks and we set up 21 shows in different orphanages. And they were only oftentimes 10, 15 miles. And we'd been used in Ethiopia traveling 10 hours on a road to get to a refugee camp. A road that the UN had to build to get from the town way out to it. So we got there to St. Joseph's Orphanage in Port-au-Prince, and they put us up there, and we did a magic show for the kids. And the kids had part of their what they did at St. Joseph's was dance. And it became a big part of their life. And they got better and better and better at this Afro kind of Caribbean dance. So much so that they got invited that year to a big Afro Caribbean Cuban festival at the British Museum.
They were called the Resurrection
Or the
Dance,
British Academy of Music.
Resurrection Dance Theater.
Resurrection Dance Theater
of Haiti.
And one of their dances, there was a boy there who was named Sonny, and he was handicapped. He really couldn't walk very well on his, and he had a dream one night that he flew out the window of the orphanage and he flew all around Port-au-Prince, and he described like maybe he really had been out of his body flying around. And they created this beautiful dance for Sonny, where two of the dancers came out and lifted Sonny up and flew him all around the stage, and Sonny was describing what he was seeing, and the other boys in the orphanage were drumming, and it was very, very beautiful. And they had another orphanage connected with St. Joseph's called Wings of Hope. And it was an orphanage for children with cerebral palsy. And we went up there and spent a day with the children and performing for them, and having a wonderful, wonderful day. And is there something from your
Just
journal?
the boys dressed in their costumes, drumming. These are the orphan boys of the Resurrection Theater.
Aren't those journals amazing? Just go, show that again, sweetie. That is so, so beautiful.
And
Haiti is, Port-au-Prince is a very, very difficult, violent feeling place. But when you leave Port-au-Prince and you go out into the countryside, Haiti is a very, very beautiful place.
The countryside, mountains beyond mountains, just like.
That's what Haiti means, mountains beyond mountains. And we ended up meeting someone named, what was
Godey.
Godey. And he used to have a children's radio show in Port-au-Prince. And
We stayed with him once.
we stayed with him in Val de Jacmel, a village out in the countryside, and it was beautiful. And he was building a community center, and it was only about half finished. And he wanted us to do a magic show in that unfinished community center. And so they advertised it because there weren't telephones or anything. We spent the entire afternoon going from house to house. And every place we stopped, they would give us something to drink and something to eat. And then around midday, we got to some place and they served lunch.
We even took a nap.
And they said, why don't you take a nap? So we slept for an hour, and then we got
insisted.
up and went and that's how the word of the magic show spread all around the village of Val de Jacmel, the valley.
And then we did a performance that evening.
In
that
at the community center.
Community center that was still, the bricks, I think, and the mortar were still drying.
Yeah. And we slept in Godey's house, and all night, ba-boom on the roof, ba-boom.
Yeah.
And were they coconuts or avocados, or what was that? Or mangoes?
Mangoes.
Mangoes.
Mango.
Off this gorgeous mango tree outside of Godey's house. And that was breakfast. It was all over the ground in the morning. We went out, collected the mangoes, opened them up, and had fresh fallen mangoes for breakfast.
Yeah. Some very sweet, wonderful moments. So many wonderful people away. And so many people helping other people.
Yeah. And the thing about Haiti is we had been to Africa, and we've been to Africa numerous times since. Is Haiti feels very African. It doesn't feel like Jamaica or San Kitts or other places in the Caribbean. And I think that what gets called voodoo or whatever is not about sticking pins in dolls and causing curses. There's some of that, but that's not. Voodoo is an deep connection to the earth. And you see that in Haiti while we were walking from house to house that day, advertising our magic show. We would go through fields, and in the middle of the field would be where they buried the dead. And on their way to farming and hoeing and planting and harvesting, they always stopped and honored the dead who were buried right there where all their food and life came from. Life and death, and it's all commingled in a place like Haiti. They're having another hard time. It seems like Haiti is one of the hardest places in the world, but it's also one of the most soulful, beautiful places.
So of all the places that we've been, we've mostly have just been the two of us traveling.
Yeah.
Which has made it in some ways very, very economical and easy to travel. But now we're being joined by a lot of talented magicians, and my teacher, Chris Yerlig, has traveled to us many times to India and
El Salvador.
So I think if we're going in chronological order, I think we then started going to El Salvador and working with Asa Prosar, a rural health organization in Santa Ana, El Salvador.
And that's really where
I'm going to let the cat out.
Okay. The first time we went there, we connected with Asa Prasar. And besides having a clinic, a medical clinic in Santa Ana, a big, strong part of it is eye diseases. There's a lot of eye diseases because some of it's because of the way they cook inside with an open fire, and there's lots of smoke, and that seems to be one of the things. But they have these Asa Prasar, in addition to that rural health organization and an after-school program, they have what were they called? Nucleos.
They're like day preschool.
They were actually based on the what was that American program? Head Start. There was Head Start. And they are like 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and they're preparing them for school and teaching them values and all kinds of things. So I think there were 25 or so of these nucleos, all way off in pueblos, up on the side of volcanoes, and along the banks of rivers and all sorts of places. And Asa Prasar drove us from place to place, and we did those, and they were really a lot of fun. And we got back to Santa Ana, and Dr. Guzman, who was the director and founder of Asa Prasar, she said, or her daughter Lucy, I think, said, who was running the teenage after school program, she said, I just have one more favor. We have a group of kids who meet at this place called Terminal, and it's by the bus terminal in a very, very difficult, violent part of Santa Ana, kind of run by the gang MS-13. And the kids go there after school. And there were a group of kids called the Barefoot Angels, the Angeles Descalzos. And 12 of them, Lucy said, were doing very well in school, living in a garbage dump and working in the garbage dump. And they were taken out of the dump by Asa Prasar, and their parents and them were given homes, and they were in school now, and they were doing really well.
Yeah.
And
we did a magic show in one of the dumps. Tom got in the back of we traveled quite a ways through the dump, a road that was built on the garbage, and Tom got in the back of the truck, and we had a guest performer with us.
He had conversations, so his name is Bob Kinslow, and he traveled with us, and he's just gotten back in touch, and he may be a guest. We were driving along. This woman, Miriam, was driving the truck, and she said, "Oh, this was in a place, Kamalapa," and she said, "This is like one of the dumps where the Barefoot Angels used to live." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, Miriam, could we go down and see it?" So we drove down, and we came upon one of the strangest scenes I've ever seen. It was black, smoldering.
Well, kind of gray.
Gray, smoldering black, filled with wild pigs and vultures. And then we drove past that around to where the new garbage was being done. And there were all these children and their parents who lived down there and lived off of that garbage, both to salvage it, to find scrap metal and things like that and sell it, or take the food.
Which was a really dangerous job because sometimes they climb up on the garbage truck and
as it's dumping,
as they're dumping, and sometimes are buried and of course killed.
Because they want to get the first dibs on.
Yeah.
And so we pulled in there. Can you imagine? We pull in there, set up this table on the back of this truck. Here are these kids rummaging through the garden. They all gather around the truck, and this magic show happens. And they come up and help us. And I can remember one of these kids. This was almost 20, as if it was yesterday. He didn't have any shirt on. He just had these kind of shorts on, and he came up and helped me. He just got inside of me somehow. I just remember him so much. And then we did the show, and Bob did some things. I did some things, and
I don't think I did reform.
You didn't
I
reform it?
photographed
You
it.
photographed it.
Mm-hmm.
And we get back in the truck and we drive back out of the dump. And nobody's talking. And there was one woman who was a volunteer, and Janet and me and Miriam, the driver. And Rob. And nobody's talking. I mean, there was this silence in the truck. And Miriam speaks first, and she says, "Time has not changed for those children." I said, "What do you mean, Miriam?" She said, "Well, now time will be measured before the magicians came and after the magicians came." And all of a sudden, it sort of dawned, and these people are living down in this pit. And we went down there, and these magicians appeared. That was like magic. And then we did a magic show, and then we disappeared. It was like time changed. It was that she said that. It was like one of the great moments.
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes? Oh.
And we have been
Oh my God,
to
we have
over
like 1 minute left.
30 countries. And
this is a group of young Buddhist monks, tiny little Buddhist monks in Nepal. And
here's a little Mayan face from El Salvador.
From El Zalco. That was an amazing. Oh, I have to show this. This is one of the great stories.
This is in Iran
on the Afghan-Iran border.
at is this one a refugee camp
Yeah,
for those ladies?
we pulled into this refugee camp. I think it was in a town called Kerman.
Uh-huh.
And this was, a very similar scene. We pull into this camp where I shouldn't say Janet met these women. She did, but these women met LaFleur. And we pull in, and there's this Afghan and us. He looks just like one of those great Afghan elders with the big white beard and the
we had
turban.
some of those photos of that.
And we sit down. We have our first cup of tea with him. This is the essence of Magicians Without Borders. This next story that we're going to end with, and we sit down. We have tea, and he says, "Where would you like to perform?" And we said, "Well, we perform in almost any kind of situation, but it's best if we can perform inside. It's just better focus and everything for the kids." He said, "Oh, well, the inside space we have is the mosque. We'd be honored to have you perform in the mosque." I went, "Whoa." So we go into the mosque, we set up, they bring in 500 girls. We did a show for them, and then we did a show for boys, and the show was finished. After the show for the girls, these Iranian women, all wrapped up in their chadors, came over, and one of them, it looks terrified, it may have just
Appalled,
been
maybe.
appalled or something. The other one looks, "Oh my God, I wish I could be doing that." And look at Janet. She had to wear a headscarf underneath her black hat in Iran.
Yeah.
So after the show, we sit down with that same elder, and he was just so pleased and so happy. And he said, "I've been in this camp for 17 years, and you are the first entertainers to come to this camp." He said, "I don't mean any blame by this, but I think the international relief agencies who take good care of us, they give us food, shelter, clothing, security." He said, "But I think they imagine we're only bodies. But today you fed the minds and imaginations of those children, and they will be talking and thinking of those magic shows for months and months. God bless you. Please come again." That is the mission of Magicians Without Borders, at least the entertainment portion of it, said better than you or I
Yeah.
could have.
So on that note, I think we need to
We didn't
sign
get
up.
to talk about starting teaching kids. We did in El Salvador when we came back from doing all
When
those
did you
shows.
start that in El Salvador, and now India with Prerana,
And
teaching the
in
girls?
Colombia, El Salvador, Brazil, South Africa.
And now how many people? We have programs now on Bogota, Carlos.
In Brazil, El Salvador, Costa Rica, with Diego, who you heard last week, and South Africa, and 2 programs in India.
Yeah.
And here
Is Carlos, and tune in next Wednesday for more, and maybe we'll come back again and tell you more stories.
Hey, Tom, Janet, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that you did. It was wonderful hearing you share those stories and, watching those pictures. And I don't know, it's every time I hear you guys talk about this, it's just mind blowing. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this and for, starting it. It's It's just been wonderful.
And we know you're wearing a mask because you're in the hospital with your father, and I hope
Yes.
all goes well.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you
And
so
that's in
much.
Bogota, Colombia.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. So thank you so much for doing this episode with us tonight. It was amazing hearing you, Janet and Tom, and everybody. We hope to see
We
you
had a
next week.
wonderful time. Good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you very
everyone.
much.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, everyone.